Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
I'm Sir Watts. I'm a happy alcoholic. Hi, everybody. I tell you, this has been a great conference. I hope you've had as much fun as I have. If you have, let's give Hugh and the committee a big hand. I want to thank the committee for thinking about me and inviting me to come over and share. I've had a great weekend. A couple of things happened. There we go. A couple of things have happened, and that's what I think are supposed to happen. I got to meet some new friends, and I got to see some old friends that I hadn't seen for a while. And I'm going to leave here, and my sobriety is going to be much enhanced due to this conference. And I don't know seriously if I've ever seen as many volunteers hop to and do a good job and look like they enjoyed it as any conference I've ever been to. So it's been a great conference. I want to thank Bub for letting me borrow his seersucker suit for tonight. You know, it's pretty easy when you have speakers like Bub and Tina and Pat, and they go on in front of you and do such a good job, then you're comforted knowing there's no way. See, I know there's no way I can louse this thing up now, I can tell you. I wish Tina hadn't have just really fussed about the old farts too much. But it's been a great conference, a lot of good speakers, and you know, I feel like I'm here tonight because I'm a real alcoholic that's found a substitute for alcohol. And that's what I want to talk about tonight. You know, I tried a lot of things before I found a substitute for alcohol. And when I really found out that the substitute for alcohol was the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, the Oldtimers told me I had to do some things if that was going to work for me. They said I had to get a home group, I had to attend meetings, I had to get a sponsor, I had to get into the first 164 pages of our textbook, the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and take the principles out of the 12 steps and put them to work in my life. And if I did that, I'd be able to stay sober. And because I did those things, I haven't found it necessary to take a drink since September the 25th, 1973. Now, and I also want to tell you that due to this fellowship and the things I've learned here, that it hadn't been necessary since that day in September for me to be analyzed, tranquilized, hypnotized, or baptized. I'm one of the fortunate ones. Alcoholics Anonymous has done the whole job for me. You know, we hear a whole lot today about problems other than alcohol. Hey, man, I had problems way before I even knew that alcohol existed. See, I'm not only an alcoholic, I'm a hillbilly. And I was born in the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia during the Great Depression, and they named me Sterling Fletcher Watts III. I don't think I had a chance from the very get-go. And right away things started happening that made me feel a little bit different, or things that I didn't understand. I never seemed to have any identity. Mama taught school up there in the mountains for about 40 years, and the first 18 years of my life, everywhere I went, I was Miss Kitty's little boy. And when I was about 18 or 19, I married this prominent farmer's daughter from across the river, and overnight I became Mac Jackson's son-in-law. And I came down to South Carolina in '62 to get rid of all this, and I had one son who was quite a football player. Was all-state, played for Clemson, signed in the pros. So when I got down there, I became Waldo's daddy. And so you see, when you let me stand up here and say I'm Sterling Watts, man, I thought I'd arrived. I was really. And now it's necessary for me to tell you how I got here. And I know a lot of you old boys over here in Mississippi just came in from Greenville and Macomb and different places and said, I want to come in and get in these 12 steps. I've been drinking a little bit too much and I want to get spiritual. Well, I didn't get here that way. I had a lot of help getting here. I had help from judges and state troopers and preachers, but I had the most help from Al-Anon. In fact, I say I became into the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous when I became powerless over Al-Anon. I say that because my wife, I guess, got tired of some of my behavior, and she somehow got hooked up with Al-Anon after a while. And she'd been going about 6 or 7 months before, some length of time before I got there. And do y'all remember the first night they ever asked you to read? Man, I never felt so. I just felt like I'd been elected president. And I went back in the restroom and studied. I didn't want to miss a word. And I came back and I'm sitting there, and the guy said, and to read how it works, and he forgot my name, and he said Nancy's husband. And you know, a guy with the ego like I've got kind of needs that. I go a lot of places today, and I know a lot of people, and if I get in a room and I get to knowing, you know, that I might know who I am or think I know a little bit, somebody will call on old what's his face, and I need that. My sponsor and I, when I did my 4th and 5th step, we came to the conclusions that I was a normal child that was raised up. I was a weird child raised up in a normal home, and I accepted that. It was obvious, really, but you know, they study. They've been studying us alcoholics for years, and we were the most studied species, other than white rats, I believe that there is, and they come out with these real catchy things, and hey, I heard they came up with this thing about a dysfunctional family. Well, I went to Jim. I said, hey, Jim, you reckon that we made a mistake? You reckon instead of me being a weird kid that I was raised up in a dysfunctional home? He said, I'm absolutely sure you were there, weren't you? So, you know, and I'd take a look at that, and about every place I went till I got to Alcoholics Anonymous was kind of dysfunctional if I stayed there very long, that's for sure. I was a liar, and a good liar, and I don't know where it came from. I was a born liar. I've been lying ever since I could remember, and, you know, I lie to you about anything, and I was a little bit different kind of a liar. I just didn't lie and leave. I hung around and kept lying till I made you believe the lie. That's what made me feel good, see? And to show you to the extent I'd go for lying when I was about so high, we had to memorize Bible verses and recite them before we ate any meal on Sunday. And I was capable of memorizing Bible verses, and I remember some of them that I memorized then. I remember them now. But I took a great pleasure in making them up. And one of the verses I remember making up was, if a man goeth on a long journey and returneth not, he stayeth a long while. Now, and I can remember the Oldtimers running through the Bible trying to find that. And that just made me feel warm all over. And I had one sister, and she was 5 years older than I, and that was the most perfect human being that ever walked the face of the earth. She never did a wrong. She never told a lie. She never did anything she wasn't supposed to do. She made straight A's all the way through school, valedictorian in high school, dean's list in college. It's on and on. And the thing that I remember most about my childhood was them asking me why I couldn't be like Elizabeth. I didn't know why I couldn't be like Elizabeth. Wasn't sure I wanted to be, but I didn't know why I couldn't. And it started a deal where I knew I wasn't going to measure up. You know, I kind of look at this thing. I liked attention, and still do. And if she had cornered the market on being good, so if I was going to get any attention whatsoever, it had to be good, being good at being bad. And that's kind of the way I was raised up. Now, drinking was not much of a problem for me during my teen years or my early years, because we were in a small mountain village up there, and I was closely supervised. Everybody knew my family, knew my mother, so it wasn't a big problem. But shortly after graduating from high school, I had to go 55 miles away from home to be inducted into service. And that night I drank too much, and I got sick, and I almost died. And now that's the first night I'd ever been away from home without adult supervision. And 27 years later, 3 states away, I'm still drinking too much, I'm still getting sick, and I'm still almost dying. You know, it's necessary for me to tell you that, and for me to remember, I was a sick drunk. Sooner or later, I got sick. I could drink a lot of liquor, but I got sick. And sick drunks aren't very popular, I can tell you that. And, you know, when I first started telling my story, my Al-Anon said, "Do you have to tell all those old sick stories?" She said, "I cleaned enough of that stuff up, and I'm tired of hearing about it." She said, "Could you please do something else?" And so I adopted a word that she accepted. I say I unswallowed a lot. So I didn't have much of a military career. I was supposed to stay in 18 months. I stayed 13, and they gave you the synopsis was they called me in and said, if you'll go on back to Virginia, we'll give you an honorable discharge, but if you stay here, you're going to end up in Leavenworth. And that was all because of alcohol. I got back from service, and while I'd been gone to service, the industry had moved into the mountains, and I got a job on the ground floor of a textile mill. I married my childhood sweetheart. A year later, my son came along, and I began to work real hard. We had an old saying, you work hard, you play hard, and I would have told you, I got a lot of promotions in my job and was doing real well. And in fact, shortly, I guess in 1955, a group of us young husbands bought a wooded tract of land, and we started building houses like everybody did after World War II. So my life would seem like it was just, it was doing fine. If you'd have asked me, I would tell you that liquor had no problems, drinking was no problems to me at all. Now, this is a period from like 1948 to 1962. And during that period of time, when I look back on it, I was involved in 5 or 6 automobiles that were totally lost. Sometimes I was driving, sometimes I was riding. Most of the time we didn't have any idea who's riding, who's driving. During that particular time, I had 3 accidents. On Thanksgiving Day, I had 3 accidents in the same day. And that day I hit the same man twice. And now, I didn't just hit him over in the parking lot where I just unhooked from him, you know. I got him 15 miles away, way over in the afternoon where I'd hit him that morning. And in those days, you just, all you did was call your agent and tell him you'd had a wreck, and you know, there wasn't any big trouble. And I remember reporting that second accident, and the agent said, "What?" I said, "How drunk were you?" I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, you reported that accident this morning." I said, "Man, I'm not drunk. I've hit him again, you know." And you know, I've never been handy with tools, or I don't know a pair of pliers from a screwdriver, and I love a pretty yard, but I don't particularly care about getting out there and doing anything about it. I don't have a green thumb. And be honest with you, I never did anything got into points with the lady folks. I did things like lay out on the creek bank drunk fishing or playing cards all night, that kind of thing. And so shortly after we got, and I've always been a victim. Everywhere, if I moved into Greenville today, right, just say I did, the way I perceived this is right across the street, I'd look out the window the next morning and somebody would have put yard of the month over there on my neighbor's yard, and I'd be right in the midst of a bunch of handymen that could fix anything. And so, shortly after we were married, it didn't take her long to pick up on this kind of stuff, and she'd say, well, why can't you be like Hugh, and why can't you be like Tom? And see, that didn't bother me at all, because I'd been to boot camp on why you couldn't be like Elizabeth, so I was ready for all this. Now, I told you we bought that tract of land, and we were going to build these houses, and they were all going to be turnkey houses. But I can tell you, the handymen not going to let this happen. They going to do something. Some of them put the roof on. Some of them did the brickwork. Some of them did, they're doing something all the time. And I think that's the first time I ever felt what really can remember feeling impending doom. She was looking at me and saying, big boy, when are you going to do something, And so one day she was gone up to her dad's. And now let me stop right here and see if any of y'all, by this time in my life, I had gotten to the point where mentally I had assigned a certain amount of drinking to any job I didn't want to do. And, I'm a kind of painter that I'd go get the liquor 3 or 4 times before I ever got the drop cloth in the paint. I didn't like to borrow money. If I was going to go to the bank, I had to have a quart. I had that 2-pint sister. I called her because we didn't get along. She was coming. She was my 2-pint sister. Now, I'm sitting there, and I noticed I used to drink some, real intelligent liquor. I could have some just great ideas. And I looked up and down that street, and nobody put their mailbox in. And I never had put a mailbox in, so I couldn't know how much liquor to assign to it. But it sounded like I did a pretty good job. I went down to, it's an alcoholic deal, I think, if you really look back on it. I went down to the plant, and I didn't get a welder. I got the head engineer and had him, we took 8-inch pipe, and spot welded a 1.5-inch pipe down in it and brought that thing home, and I sunk it down in 4 feet of steel reinforced concrete. Went down to Sears, got the biggest mailbox they had down there, and put Sterling Fletcher Watts III across it. I just let it flow. It might have been old English letters, I don't know. And I brought that thing back, and I tamped it down in the ground, and it was in there to stay. And I remember going to bed that night, and I'm thinking, she's going to be proud of you. I was just ready to slide off into that slumber that we drunks know, and I thought when she gets back tomorrow, she's really going to be proud of you. And the next morning, my phone rang about 6 o'clock, and as my neighbor, he said, Watts, what in the world was wrong with you? I said, why? He said, you got that mailbox in facing your house. Now, I had about an hour to dig it up and turn it around before she got home, and you'd have thought I'd have built a small swimming pool and filled it in. My drinking was tavern drinking. I don't know whether you had any taverns in Mississippi or not, but I was a tavern drinker, and I loved the taverns. I loved the country music, the beautiful ladies in there that would listen to your problems, that understood you and help you with your shuffleboard game. I just loved the taverns, and my wife hated the whole drinking scene. She just hated it. She'd said things like, well, you almost stopped and got a beer. And, she knew when I was thinking about it. So it didn't take long to see that this marriage is not going too good. Everything I like, she hates. And we had developed a thing that I called kind of a muscular chemical reaction. When I bent a muscle to take a chemical, her mouth flew open. And I called that chin music. And that was the chinniest woman you ever saw in your life. And I never got to drink in peace, just chin, chin, chin. And by this time I'd had several promotions in the plant, and I was buying a lot of chemicals and a lot of machinery, and the salesmen are calling on me, and they drank just like I did. They drank just like I did. But they had one thing that I noticed that they had that I didn't have, and they left home on Monday, and they didn't get home till Friday. They had a whole week to drink without chin music. So I gave up probably the best job I ever had with Burlington Industries, and I came to South Carolina to sell chemicals. Now I know today that I came to South Carolina to drink in peace. I went to work for a company, one owner company out of Providence, Rhode Island, and I remember what he said to me. He gave me the keys to a new Ford automobile, an unlimited expense account, and explained to me that the people in the South were not familiar with his company's name, and that he wanted me to use those tools to get his name well known in the South. And I know that he meant where he had chemicals to sell, but I got them everywhere. I can tell you, there's not a jail or a judge or a state trooper probably in 3 states that didn't know about that company before I was through. I did a real good job. Up in Virginia, you could only haul so much liquor. I don't know, maybe 4 quarts or something per person in the car. You were limited to what you could do. And but when I got to South Carolina, I found if I could buy it, I could store it in that old Ford automobile. And I just loaded it up full of liquor, and off I went selling chemicals. And most of the textile plants that I called on were out in the country, and there's a lot of dry counties there, and I'd just pull in on the parking lot and raise the trunk, and we'd have a few drinks, or we'd go around to the fishing hole and have a drink, or down to the golf course and have some drinks. I had one guy say, you called down here for 19 months, and we weren't sure what you were selling. Said, we thought you was a liquor salesman in the wrong place. Well, but it begins to catch up with you, and I begin to, I'm just trying to make a living, do the very best I can with what I've got to do with, what they gave me, and the state troopers begin to get involved. And I had 5, just to show you what a con man I was, I had 5 or 6 DUIs and never lost my driver's license. You couldn't do that today, and I'm very thankful you couldn't. I had to buy out of them. I found out who you could go to and who you could buy out of. One time I bought my whole folder, just bought my whole driver's folder that they had. And, I know today that had I been held responsible the very first time I got caught for driving drunk, you'd have a different speaker, or I'd have a different story. But any time that I could beat the rap, I just felt like God. I felt like they can't stop me. I'd get out of jail, go by the bootleggers or the Elks Club and get a half a pint and drink it and throw it out on the courthouse steps and speed out of town. And but eventually things began to happen. My wife began to notice some of these peculiar habits, and she got to looking for help for me, whether I needed it or not. And we went to some AA meetings. Now, I'm not sure exactly where we went. We might have gone to a lot of Automobile Association meetings, because she was a lot sicker than I was. But anyway, one of the meetings I went to, you can just, we have a keen sense, the alcoholic does, I think. And I noticed they had this old guy there named Squire Jones, and he'd been sober, I don't know at that time, 29 or 30 years, and he was she said it looked like a little angel, But anyway, I could see that it really, her eyes, he got her attention. And so I put that in the back of my head. And first time the chin music got so bad, I said, well, I'll just call Squire and I'll talk to him about AA. She said, here's his number. She had it there all along. And I called Squire and I told him I was ready to talk. And he got in his car and started to cross town. I got in my car and left town. And he got over there and he kindly 12-stepped my wife. And, he'd spent his good gas coming over there, and he told her a lot about Alcoholics Anonymous, and she told him a lot more about me than I wanted her to. But anyway, she must, somewhere along the line, she got across to him how bad I was shaking in the morning. And I was shaking bad. Man, I could thread a sewing machine, it running wide open, And so what came out of this 12-step call that he made on her, that if I would drink some K-Rose syrup and orange juice, that I'd be, or honey and orange juice, that it would help my shakes and maybe sober me up. Well, a ritual was I'd come in and I'd be about half drunk, and she'd be standing there and she'd shove 3 tablespoons full of that honey down my throat and give me this concoction to drink. And I'd drink it down, and I'd head back to my clothes hamper where I had my vodka hid, and I'd be all stuck together. I couldn't even get a drink in my mouth. We know that if you're out there drinking and you got a head full of AA and a belly full of booze, it messes up your drinking. Well, I can tell you that honey and orange juice don't do much for your drinking either. So it didn't take us long to see that probably AA may not work for me. It made me the sweetest drunk east of the Mississippi, I guess. I think maybe the fruit flies followed me around. I don't know, but this didn't slow her down. She looked around and she found some cat that had a job just like I had, and he'd tried AA and it didn't work for him, and he'd gone and he'd gotten rehabilitated, and so he came over and talked to me, and this started a deal of me going to. He'd gotten sober on he'd gotten rehabilitated through the psychiatric treatment, and this started me on a long series of going to the psychiatrist, and this is very interesting. I got a couple hour story on that if you're there, but anyway, and this is my take on the thing, and I value the profession of psychiatry if you need them and if you want them. But and since that time I have sponsored 2 psychiatrists, and but I'll tell you, I have never seen any type of psychologist or psychiatrist that's any match for an alcoholic that don't want to be there. Now I'm telling you, we're good enough that we will absolutely drive them insane. If I'd have stayed there, this guy, they'd have had to institutionalize him. I was driving him crazy. He didn't know which way to go, and finally he just threw up his hands and he said, well, I'm going to put him where I can observe him more closely the next time he acts up. Now, that's interesting. That word act up. They didn't have anywhere to put a drunk back in the late 60s and early 70s. We didn't have detox. We didn't have any treatment centers. You either went to they had a hospital for the emotionally disturbed. And they'd take you to jail, but the jail, they didn't want you in jail because you just go in there dry. I weighed almost 300 pounds, and most of them had to go to work the next morning on chain gang, and I'm hooping and hollering. They just didn't want you in jail, so I ended up, he would put me in this emotionally, in a hospital for the emotionally disturbed. Now, talking about that acting up, I've been over to that hospital 5 or 6 times. I've been over there in the trunk of a car. I've been over there in the back of a pickup truck. I've been over there in an ambulance. I've been over there any way you can go, and I'd be dog drunk every time I got there. And if you look at my record, my medical record, it says things like hypertension, paranoia. They just wouldn't, I guess at the prices, they felt embarrassed to put drunk down there, the prices they were charging you. But and I can tell you this is my perception on the type of treatment they were giving me and how they were handling me. I'm the kind of drunk that you give me three or four injections of liquid Valium, and I'll just go to sleep and sleep about 5 days and wake up, and I'm ready to go. And I woke up, and this is my perception the first time over there. I woke up, and I was in occupational therapy. And man, you know, I'm making leather watch bands and ceramic ashtrays. And I've never been as proud in my life. I'm talking about quality stuff here now. These leather watch bands were a thing of beauty, really. And I could make three. I got so I could make 3 watch bands in 1 hour. And the next best one, it took them 3 hours to make one. And I was popping those watch bands out. If they hadn't run out of leather, I'd still be over there. I can tell you that right now. And my wife came to see me, and she said, you know, the company's calling, and they won't know where you are, and I'm afraid you're going to get fired. I said, don't worry about it. I can stay on down there as a head therapist because I'm the best one in that class. I can tell you that. And also in this place, they had a deal in there. They called us clients, and they had about 20 of us to a group. And if you'd been good all week, you got special privileges. You got some kind of a reward on Saturday. Now, somebody asked me, said, well, if you're in a hospital, how could you be bad? Well, I'll tell you what they considered bad as far as I was concerned. They had a 60-foot fountain out in front of the place, and I put a box of Tide in it. They had a snowball out there as big as this hotel almost, and they considered that bad, so we didn't get a reward. Well, this 1 week we'd all been good, and now in this group that I was in, there was 19 women and me, and most of these women were taking electric shock treatments, and they were nervous, being kind. They were nervous. Let's say that. And so our reward, our reward was to get to go on a field trip. And what that consisted of, we all gathered up out in the lobby, and they gave us a peanut butter sandwich, and we got to hike over to Kmart. Now, and the counselor explained to me, he said, now, most of these ladies smoke, but they're so nervous we can't allow them to have any matches. And he said, I'd appreciate it if you'd take the matches. And so, you know, I remember leaving that hospital and got to look back and seeing all my little entourage, and I thought they've at last seen my leadership ability. I felt like I was in officers' candidate school, you know. And I had the matches, and they didn't get to smoke till they saw me. And, you know, I felt real good about that. To show you how sick I was, about 6 months later, I realized that what really happened to me, I was 44 years old, and I'd worked my way up to being keeper of the matches in a nut house. It's just what, that's what I'd done. Well, I got home from that stench, you know, and I'd always drink a half a pint of vodka on the way home so I could explain what all I'd learned. I always could talk a little bit better if I had just a few little shots. But she said, well, you never have tried to be rehabilitated. You've never been to a proper place, have you? And I didn't know there was, but I said, no. Well, we didn't want to miss anything. And she found one down in the lower part of South Carolina, and off I went down to this place to be rehabilitated. And when I got there, I got the biggest resentment I ever had in my life. Now, I didn't know what a resentment was at that time, but I got madder than the devil. And when I got there, I still had a job, but I didn't have any insurance, and it was going to cost me $600 for this treatment. The rest of them they were wards of the state. We had a doctor. He just locked up his practice, and he's down there, and he's getting for free, and it's costing me $600, and I was hot, I can tell you. Now, I'll come back to that. I think that $600, God used that to get my attention a little later on. But anyway, I'm got a bad attitude about this, about being the only one that has to pay, and they said something about AA, did you want to go to AA? Said they meet over there on Thursday night and they got donuts and coffee. Well, I would go anywhere for donuts and coffee. And so I went over to the AA meeting and I sat there and I listened. And people were coming in for 30, 40 miles and telling their story, much as I am tonight. And I thought y'all the sickest bunch of people that I'd ever seen in my life, and I can explain to you why. They had a young man that didn't look a day over 25 years old. He stood behind that podium, and he said he couldn't take one drink without getting drunk. I never felt so sorry for a man in my life. You know, what I visualized, one drink drunk, and I thought, my, that must be awful, you know. And so I wrote his name down. I knew that when I got out of there, if I'd looked him up, if I could keep him buying, I could keep him going for 3 or 4 weeks anyway. I knew that. And that just shows you where my mind was at. My mind never was right. I never heard anything that was said. I heard something different all the time. Now, when I got ready to leave, they said, go back to Greenville, and if you don't drink, we think you'll be all right. Well, I was beginning to suspect alcohol by this time. And on the way home, I remember saying, you know, I'm going to go and I'm going to do exactly what they say, just quit drinking. And I'm going to prove to them it don't work for me, and I'm going to sue them and get my $600 back. That's what I'm going to do. Well, I did that. I went back to Greenville, and I just quit drinking. I just took booze out, and I put nothing else in. I put no God, no program, no nothing. I just took booze out. Now, if you're here and you're new and you're even ever thinking about that, whether you're new or not, don't even try it. I can tell you what happens to a real alcoholic of my type when that happens, what happened to me. I hated everybody and everything. I was so full of hate. I hated you. If you could drink and not get in trouble, or if you could not drink and have fun, I hated you. And I was just full of hate. And had I not gotten drunk, I'd have committed suicide. And I did get drunk, and that started a spell of what I call my zombolic drinking. I was nothing but a zombie. I didn't have any idea what was going on. I'd get up in the morning and I'd go out and get in the car, or I'd be in the car. Usually the steering wheel brought me to it too, and I'd look down. If I was clean like I am now, I knew I was going out. Didn't know where I was going, but going out. If I was coming in and I had unswallowed all over myself, I knew I was coming in. So and on the mornings that I look good, I'd drive around the block and check in the motel, and just to have a couple of drinks, just let my nerves settle so I could make some phone calls, make some appointments, and off I'd go. And the whole thing would go, I'd get drunk, and so I was just a zombie. I didn't know whether I was coming or going. I did get drunk, and I stayed drunk. I guess I stayed drunk maybe 5 or 6 months. We're not really sure because it was just hard for timing, but I came back from Augusta, Georgia sometime in September, and I came back, I think, to die. I went back into what Nancy used to refer as my rat hole, and I stayed back there in the rat hole several days, and I never want to forget the type of shape I was in when I came to or woke up or whatever happened to me. I'd been back there several days, and it was that old drunken liar. It stunk. You drunks know how the stench of that is. And I couldn't walk and I couldn't crawl. I barely got to crawl to the bathroom, and I'm just dying. And I just, I tried to get booze down, and I couldn't get booze down. And when I did get booze down, strange thing, nothing happened. Nothing happened. I got 2 or 3, and I didn't know what to do. An alcoholic of my type, when booze quits working, I didn't know what to do, and I just dropped my head over my hands, and I said something like, my God, nobody knows. She happened to be standing there, and she got me dressed and got me to an AA meeting that night, said they may know. And back home, we have a chip system. We give out chips, and one of the chips, you get a desire chip, and that night on the way home, I guess she noticed, she said, you didn't take a desire chip. I guess she was afraid that I wasn't going to give it a try. And I think that's the first time that I was ever honest about my drinking and about me needing help. I said, I didn't take a desire chip tonight because I know that if I don't get a drink down tonight, I'll die. I can't. I got to have a drink tonight. And you see, prior to that, I told you we went to some AA meetings back there when we met Squire. And anybody that took me to a meeting, I'd sit there and they'd hit me and I'd jump up and get a chip. If they'd have hit 6 times, I'd have gone through the birthday medallion. I didn't care. But this night, I think it was the first time I got honest. I got home that night and I did get sometime early in the morning, I got a drink down. And to my knowledge, that's the last drink I've had. Now, that last drink, more than likely, my last drink was on the 23rd of September, but I'll wait 2 days to celebrate my dry date. And I don't know why I do that. It's kind of spiritual to me because I think God knew me well enough to think that if I just maybe used 23rd as a dry date and I wasn't sure about it, that I'd be sitting in a meeting and it would dawn on me that maybe I had a dishonest dry date and you all hadn't picked up on it, and I'd lose respect for you and drink again. For whatever reason, I really respect the fact that I waited 2 days. Now that my friends, that day in September, you could never have told me that I'd be standing in Jackson, Mississippi, talking to a group of alcoholics. I never knew that a man could live as well as I live today. I never knew that you could be this happy, joyous, and free. The reason I believe I'm happy, joyous, and free today is as I stand here behind this podium, there's absolutely nothing in my life has happened that I have not discussed with another alcoholic or God that I understand him. So there's nothing hidden, there's nothing anywhere. And my life's an open book, and that gives me an awful lot of freedom. I'm a very fortunate man. I've had good health, and I contribute a lot of my good health to what I found here in Alcoholics Anonymous, because by taking those spiritual principles and putting them to work in my life, today and have had for quite a few years a stress-free life. And I think doctors are finding out more and more that stress has a lot to do with illnesses. And so, but for whatever reason, I am just absolutely amazed at what's God and I have been able to accomplish in my life. Now, I don't know why I've got this gift of sobriety. I do know that it's a gift. And, you know, drunks are going to die all over the world. Drunks are going to die here in Mississippi tonight. I know drunks that have started getting this message before I did. They were exposed to everything that I did, and they died drunk. So I have no idea why God has been so good to me with this precious gift. But I do believe this. I do believe because I've got this gift, it's like most other gifts. There's a lot of responsibility comes along with it, and I take that responsibility very, very seriously. I believe that I'm responsible to be sitting in the AA meeting when a newcomer comes in and drunk and sick as I was. It's my responsibility to get him by the hand and take him through these 164 pages just like they did me. I think it's my responsibility to continue to see that the little things that need to be done around Alcoholics Anonymous get done. They're just little things that I can help out and do, like being on the answering machine and working at intergroup and little things like that. And so I do somehow hope that I can be responsible for the rest of my life in Alcoholics Anonymous because it's meant so much to me. Now, I'm living proof that you don't have to do everything right to get this program. I made a lot of mistakes. One of the first things they told me, you had to get a sponsor, and I wasn't sure, you know. They had an old man there in the group, and I'd talk to him, and he was an ex-CB, and he was a hard liquor-drinking CB, and he drank like I did, and he said he'd been sober 29 years. Well, I knew he hadn't been sober 29 years, and if he could make y'all believe that, I wanted what he had, you know. So that's how I picked that sponsor. And I remember we used to we used to gather outside, and he told me, he keeps saying he was wanting me to pray all the time. And, I took that not to heart very much. And one night I was out in the yard before the meeting, and I had a group. I was telling stories, and I had a group. I had them charmed. They were just listening to everything I had to say. And I have no idea what preposterous story I was telling, but he walked up behind me and pecked me on the shoulder and said, "Boy, are you praying?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You're a damn liar." And I went home. I don't think I went to that meeting. I'm not sure. I don't think I went to that meeting. I may have, but I know I went home that night, and I said the first honest prayer and meant it since he'd been on me. I prayed that old man would get drunk, and I'd get to give him his desire chip. And that's how much I hated, because you see, he had embarrassed me in front of my peers, and it took me a while to get over that. I had some other things. They used to have a deal going when I got here. I hope you don't have this going in your group. They'd say, "Is there anybody got anything that's bothering their sobriety they'd like to talk about?" Well, hell, everything that's going on was bothering my sobriety. Everything made me want to drink. But I noticed that the people that put out the story, the worst story they had, the more they loved they got when the meeting was over. Didn't take me long. So pretty soon I'd throw out a subject, and it wouldn't be true. It wouldn't be a word of it true. It'd be the most god-awful story you ever heard. And they'd spend all meeting talking about it. And when it's over with, they'd just love me and tell me how sorry they was. And had one old lady there. Another thing, I did do some things right. I did those things wrong. I was a slip planner, so don't be planning slips. They know all about them. But anyway, they had this old lady. She was always on about home group. You got to be a home group member. Be a home group member. My sponsor, home group. And I realize today why the home group is so important. I think that's one of the most important things in my sobriety. People I sponsor, I'm absolutely make sure they get a home group and that they're there every time the home group meets. You see, anytime I'd gone into any kind of an organization, I looked at their rules. And I knew that if you broke the rules, you got in trouble. But if you learned to circumvent them, if you found a loophole, if you could do anything that you could find to break the rules or use the rules and be able to talk your way out of, you'd be all right. And I suspect that by going to a home group, these people recognized that fact. We had this old lady there, and she'd been sober longer than dirt, and she's one of these ladies that would give you her phone number and say, "Young man, give me a call before you take a drink." And I'd say, "You gave it to me Tuesday." "You may have lost it. Take my phone number." So I'd been out on the road, and nothing had gone right, and the customers weren't buying, and everybody's mad at me, and I called home, and the chin music started, and it's just a miserable day. And I pulled up on the interstate and got out at the rest area and got on the phone, and I called Taylor. And I explained to her what a bad week I'd had. I explained to her what was going on at my house about the chin music, and that I had 7 liquor stores to pass, and there's no way in the frame of mind I'm in now that I can get by those liquor stores and not stop and get a bottle. And I said, "Old lady, you want me to call you? Now, what do you want me to do?" She said, "Go out on the interstate and get in the median and stand there and strip off naked." Said, "They'll take you to jail." Yeah. I said, "Well, I hung that phone up." I said, "That danged old woman, she'd insulted my intelligence." And I went right by every one of those liquor stores. Now, of course, we know what Taylor did, and she broke up my slip. I had a lot of other slips that got broken up. I used to sit on the front row like this, and I'd have a mug of beer up on top and the frost running down it, and I wouldn't be hearing what the speaker said. I'd be planning what I was going to do on Saturday or the next day or whatever. And I'm sitting there this one night, and I got this mug of beer sitting up on my head, and I'm planning on going and getting, see, I never had any light beer. And light beer seemed like to me that ought to be all right. And I never had tried it, and I was interested, and so I was going to go get some light beer. And that night they had, when they gave out the chips, old Sam came up there and picked up a chip, I think he had about 90 days sober like I did, and here, while I'd been out of town, he had to get that chip, and I went up afterwards to find out what happened, and he looked like he'd been run over by a Mack truck. And I said, Sam, what in the world happened? He said, Wednesday, a week ago, I started drinking light beer. Well, I said, scratch plan A, you know. Well, my sponsor got me by the hand. I had good sponsorship, and he got me by the hand, and he did a thorough job of teaching me the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the 164 pages. He took me through the steps. He stayed with me all the way. I learned a lot in the steps about love and trust, but mainly I learned about me, and I didn't know that's what I didn't know. That surprised me. I learned what my capabilities are, or what my limitations are. I missed out on half of my life because I didn't want to try something because I couldn't do it, I thought, as well as other people. And I learned that all I have to do, I have one obligation. All I have to do is do the very best today that I can do with what God gave me to work with. I'm not very talented, doesn't make any difference. As long as I use the talents He got me, that He gave me to the best of my ability that day, that's all I have to do. And that was very encouraging to me. I understand sponsorship. I had great sponsorship, and in making amends, that's where I needed my sponsors to tell me when I was ready to make them and how to make them and walk with me. And I had an old fellow up in Virginia, and we lived on his farm at one time, and I had done about everything you could do to a man. He just hated me. And it was time for me to go back, and I didn't want to go back. And Jim listened to the type of amend I had to make, and he knew how bad it was going to be, and he drove with me 270 miles. And we went up. I called ahead of time, and I asked this guy, I said, he told me what to say. I said, I'm trying to make some changes in my life. Could I come by and talk to you about them? Jim was afraid that if I just led head on, he wouldn't even see me. And so we drove up there, and I went in by myself, and I talked to the old man. And he looked at me. I'll never forget what he said. He heard me out, and he said, you were born an SOB. You'll die an SOB. And the only reason I gave you the time of day is because you had a good mother. And I left. And now, I was devastated. And had I not had my sponsor sitting out in the car with me at that time, and I don't know what I would have done. Now let's fast forward about 5 or 6 years. I'm 300 miles away all the time, and I hadn't been back to the mountains very much. I don't know what this old man heard or why he heard it, but I'm back up there at a funeral, and after I'm just standing around like right at the closing of the funeral, and he walked by behind me, and he hit me on the back, and he said, boy, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of everything I hear. And that was because of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, he never said any more to me than that, and I've not talked to the old man since then. But that shows you just, had I not had my sponsor with me to make that amends, I don't think I'd have ever gotten out of it. I had a problem with death. If anybody died in my family, the only thing I knew to do was just get drunk, make an ass out of myself. My mother died, I got drunk, made an ass out of myself. Daddy died, got drunk, made an ass out of myself. I'd been sober, I don't know, almost 10 years, and my wife of 35 years, Al-Anon of 10, dropped dead very suddenly. And 3 months later, my sponsor died, and 6 months from then, my sister died. I'd have never been able to get through any of that if it had not been for what I'd seen the Oldtimers do. They never told me, they never said anything, but I'd all of a sudden see some of the older Oldtimers, and they'd be tripling up on their AA involvement, whatever it might be, more meetings, this, that, and the other. And I asked one of them, and it's when they had trauma in their life. I'd say, well, what's happened, and my son died, or this happened, or somebody was hurt in a car wreck. So they had showed me what to do, and that's what I did. I tripled up my actions in AA, and I'd have never gotten through that bad patch if it hadn't have been for Alcoholics Anonymous, your support and what I'd learned here. And I contend that you can get from here to here with what we find here in Alcoholics Anonymous, the power that we find here in Alcoholics Anonymous. All we have to do is come in here and ask for it. And it's always worked for me. Now, I got through that period, and I, after about a year, I got very lonely. And because I'm in AA, I met a lovely AA lady, and we were married, and we got married. We were married and stayed married for 20 years. Had a tremendous AA marriage. We had, she spoke a lot. She sponsored people. I sponsored people. I had about 10 more years of sobriety than she did, so she needed her program, and I had to have a program, and we developed a program together. And in 2002, I was at an AA golf outing, and they called me, and Donna had an aneurysm or a hemorrhage, and she never made it to the hospital. And I had to come back from up in the mountains playing golf, and I remember coming down the mountains, and I was so grateful at being an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous, because what's going through my mind is, God, what do you want me to learn from this? What are you trying to teach me? Please give me the strength to learn whatever it is that I'm supposed to learn. And it worked real well for me. Now, in between these things, I have become an 11th step person. I love that 11th step. I try to live my life by that 11th step. I call the 11th step my walking around step. And, I ask God every day, and I have for many years, every day, just to guide and direct my thinking for that day. And, of course, I thank Him at night. And but during the day, when I had an awful temper, and I've learned to control that temper, and the way that when it starts to flare up now, I'm able to use the 11th, 10th, and 11th step to get through it. But that 11th step, I know what God's will is for me most all the time. Is I just don't want to do it. And when I don't want to do something bad enough, I pretty well know that it's God's will. And it tells me what to do. It tells me what to do. When I don't want to do something and I figure it's God's will, I pray. I pray for the power to do God's will. And it's kind of worked for me. Now, after Donna died, I got lonesome. And I met a lady and tripled up my meetings in my involvement in AA, and I met a lady named Judy. And Judy and I have been married now about 5 years. Judy's 10 years sober, and I'm 36 years sober. I got a program, she's got a program, we're developing a program together. It's a great way to live. And see, God's been good to this old drunk. I had an Al-Anon for 10 years. I had an AA for 20. I've got another AA for 10. And these relationships have always worked and worked well. And I contend that it's because we put God and AA before anything else. And every morning, for many years now with these three ladies, we've had a quiet time, and we've taken the time to pray together early in the morning and ask God to come into the marriage and help us do the right thing. I told you about my son. He's got two children. My grandchildren are grown now. One's 31, one's 29, and they've never seen me take a drink. And if I never get another reward out of Alcoholics Anonymous, that's a reward enough right there. It's just great. And I remember that little girl. I remember Allison saying to me one time, I guess maybe she'd been to an AA meeting, heard my story. She said, Paul, I can't believe you were ever in jail. I just can't believe it. And she asked me to come over to her school and talk to her class on alcoholism. And it really meant a lot to me. And I went over and you know, I remember I'm standing out there in the lobby of that school, and this little gray-headed principal came up to me, and she looked me in the eye, and she said, "Are you Allison's granddaddy?" Now, I don't think I'm ever going to find out who I am, but I thank God tonight I know what I am. I'm an alcoholic that's found a substitute for alcohol and Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank you for letting me tell you about it.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs, long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down. And then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.